What's up, my wizards? Dev from SBMTG Place down there. We got decks and stuff. And today I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while. This is the newest installment, actually just the second installment, in our How to Build series. You know, you can give a man a fish or you can teach a man to fish, which is what I'm going to try and do today. Izzet Aggro is a deck that got like 3 pieces with the release of Oath of Gatewatch. And you know, a lot of decks are only ever looking for like 1 piece, obligatory anime reference, in case you forgot you were watching YouTube. But a lot of decks are only looking for 1 piece when a new set comes out to really become a thing. And this deck got at least 3. So we're going to start by telling you how to build Izzet Aggro, but we're going to branch out from there too, because I think there's obviously cases for Temur Aggro and definitely Jeskai Aggro in this format too. But if you're on a budget, I want to start with Izzet Aggro because it'll only cost you between like $50 and $80 on TCG Player to put all these cards together. Man, it's fairly good and really, really fun for that matter. Important to start with the creature base, right? And this is sort of going to be the default creature base for any, you know, Izzet-based aggro deck that we're going to build in this format. We have to play at least some amount of 1-drops, and we're definitely going to start with 4 copies of Monastery Swiftspear. Just the reason to play the deck, or one of the like 3 or 4 reasons, you know. Super solid creature, can get huge and has haste, so yes. As far as other 1-drops go, I think the only true option we have right now at least is probably Zurgo. Now there are a number of blue 1-drops, but I don't like really any of them in the format. And there are a number of other red 1-drops, but the only other notable one is probably Lightning Berserker. But this deck is very, very fast. And although Lightning Berserker does just cost the 1 and has resiliency against things like sorcery speed removal and mass removal, which is all sorcery speed, I just think that Zurgo is the better choice. You know, a 1 mana, 2 power, 2 toughness guy is something you don't see every day, and we can definitely build off of that. I would probably play 4 Swiftspear definitely and 3 Zurgo, which I know is a lot because of Legend Rule, but he'll die kind of a lot. So there is that. And you want to have as many 1-drops as you possibly can. You know, we only want to go 4 or 5 turns maybe in the deck. That's it. So we want to maximize our, you know, chance to draw a 1-drop. That's all there is to it. As far as the 2-drops in the deck go, and I don't want to go any higher than 2-drops in this deck, you could put Zhanna in the deck. I know a lot of people want to do that, but I feel like this deck is far too low to the ground to do that. We don't play very many lands in the deck. We play as many spells as we can, and we don't get away with playing that many creatures either. You just want to basically build a bear, you know, make 1 or 2 guys really, really powerful and get them in for lethal. So Zhanna just really doesn't mesh with the overall philosophy of a deck that sort of plays like a Tarka Aggro. It doesn't want to play anything above a 2-drop unless it absolutely has to, and we don't have to. So I'm not with Zhanna, but you could play 1 copy of Zhanna. I definitely want to play 4 copies of Abbot of Keral Keep, and then 4 copies of Stormchaser Mage, obviously. A lot of people have been comparing Stormchaser Mage to Manus Rider, myself included, but it also feels obviously like a Monastery Swiftspear, you know, just one that you add a blue mana to so that it can fly, and get a point of toughness, which is actually more important than you might think. It survives Radiant Flames with just 1 prowess trigger, so that's cool. Something that's come up a few times in testing, actually, is that the Radiant Flames for 3, you're able to put a Titan Strength on a Monastery Swiftspear and save both the Stormchaser and the Swiftspear, which is actually amazing. But that aside, Stormchaser Mage is probably the thing that people are most excited about, even in Eternal formats, and we definitely play it in our standard deck. It's just, you know, one of the 3 pieces that we got from Oath of the Gatewatch that makes the deck, you know, something that's worth paying attention to. And as far as Abbot of Keral Keep goes, this has cool synergy too with a couple of new things that we got, Slip Through Space and Expedite, which we'll talk about very shortly here. I especially like its synergy with Expedite on the 3rd turn. You know, you play the Expedite, draw your card, give him haste, let's go. You know, you swing with a 3-power guy. That's pretty cool right there, especially if you've got a Swiftspear out too. You know, you can swing for pretty good damage in that scenario. So I do like everything about Abbot, but if you don't have the money to play Abbot, you could always play either Yumara Entangler, that's a very easy common option, or even Mage Ring Bully, but I think I like Entangler a little bit better in this format. On to the spells here, and there's a lot of flexible slots in our spell cache, but we'll start with 4 copies of Slip Through Space and 3 copies of Expedite, the 2 new things that we got from Oath. Both 1-mana cantrips, both very good in an aggro deck. I've already discussed that I like the synergy with Expedite with Abbot of Keral Keep, and also with Slip Through Space, for that matter, on the 3rd turn. These are both just obviously 1-mana cantrips that keep the deck going, which is very important. You can often draw into a Titan Strength off one of these, and that can get bonkers pretty effing quick. So I love that about these cards. However, they are flexible slots. Depending on how high with the curve you want to go, you could actually lower the copies of these cards. They are fairly flex. In some decks, I just want to play like 2 copies of Slip Through Space and maybe 1 or 2 copies of Expedite. Because, you know, in this deck, we've already got, what, 8 haste creatures? We don't necessarily need Expedite, but just the fact that it's a 1-mana cantrip that triggers prowess is very important for the deck. So I'm going to try to play as many copies as I can. Some slots that are not flexible are definitely the 4 Titan Strengths and the 3 Temur Battle Rage. You could also add a Battle Rage. I guess it's flexible in that way. But I want to play at least this many of these cards. I want to go all the way on Titan Strength because in this version of the deck, it's the only actual pump spell we can play. Sure, all of our other spells activate prowess, but it's very important to have a spell that just makes a guy big immediately. You know, basically +4/+2 off a prowess trigger is very good for just the 1 mana, and you get to scry too. So that's cool, especially considering playing a lot of spells that draw us cards. So that's awesome. Titan Strength is just ridiculous. Obviously, it's a must play. And Temur Battle Rage, along with Titan Strength or just a couple of prowess triggers, can get pretty ugly pretty fast. So, and I love, you know, just 4 mana for a Temur Battle Rage, a Titan Strength, and an Expedite or a Slip Through Space. It's just 4 mana, and Slip Through Space especially is awesome in that case. So yeah, definitely unflexible going to play these cards. Here's some 1 mana burn for you. I want to play in this version of the deck 4 copies of Wild Slash and then 3 copies of Fiery Impulse. You could switch these copies, and Wild Slash is actually insanely flexible. Some decks aren't going to play Wild Slash at all. Maybe just a 1-of Wild Slash, which I've already seen in the Jeskai Aggro decks that are lurking in Standard right now. Not too many, but it is a deck that exists. Doesn't play Wild Slash that much. But in this deck, I want to go, again, very low to the ground and play as many 1 mana spells as I possibly can. With that in mind, we can play a bunch of 1 mana burn that clears the board or hits them in the face if we need it to. A very flexible slot, on the other hand, is the 3 Dragon Fodders that I put in. I actually think this is the most flexible slot in the deck, and sure, we're only playing something like 15 creatures in the main, so this is like, you know, 3 more creatures, sort of, or really 6 more creatures if you want to look at it that way. This card does allow us to go wide and get more creatures through unblocked, because basically, with what we're doing in the deck, if just 1 guy goes unblocked, we can just break the game open immediately, even if it's just a token. You know, you end up playing, well, 1 or 2 things, you know, Titan Strength, another spell, Temur Battle Rage, and things get pretty crazy. So, especially if you can just do 2 Titan Strength and a Battle Rage, which does happen, considering we've got so many copies of both cards. That totally does happen. Even just a 1/1 that gets through 1 time can end the game. Like 8 damage, you know, 12 damage. It's ridiculous. So I like Dragon Fodder, but it is fairly flexible. And then finally, for the main deck of my Izzet build at least, 2 copies of Treasure Cruise. Just something else that draws cards very often for 1 mana, especially with all the 1 mana spells we're already playing. This is sort of a mid-game refill, which is something the deck really, really wants. I'm going to play 19 lands in this, although you could go with 20 or even 18, because again, super low to the ground and we're only playing the 2 colors. So I think 18 is viable if you wanted to play, say, a 4th Expedite or another Fiery Impulse. I could see doing that. But all we really need is probably 18. I'm going 19 here so that I can ensure that I can play as many spells during 1 turn as I possibly can. Now that deck that I just mentioned there is only going to cost you anywhere between $50 and $80, like I mentioned on TCG Player. And it's got some flexible slots. If you want to do different things with it, you obviously can. Now, what I would do if I had a couple of extra bucks is either go Temur or Jeskai, adding that 3rd color. With that in mind, let's take a look at my Temur Aggro build. I'm going to give it to you right here on the side. And I'm going to go over all the cards. We keep the same basic complement of creatures exactly, as a matter of fact, in this Temur build. We don't change any of the creatures. But the spells change a little bit. We lose a copy of Slip Through Space and a copy of Expedite, and a couple of other things here, you know. Just a copy of Treasure Cruise, so that we can play Atarka's Command to become immense, sort of even more adopting the Atarka Red philosophy here. We play extremely low to the ground. We still don't play anything that costs more than 2 mana, and we just try to blow them out as quickly as possible. The addition of Become Immense really helps out Temur Battle Rage. They're already an amazing 1-2 punch in the format. They sort of make Atarka Red what it is, you know. And adding that to this deck with a Stormchaser Mage, by the way, and Slip Through Space is ridiculous. So I really like the Temur version of this build. Short, simple, easy to make. As far as the lands for the Temur deck, that's slightly harder, but we do have a fairly easy Temur land base here for you. 19 lands, we're still only playing 19, which, you know, like I said, we could play 18 in the last deck. I want to play at least 19, if not 20 in this one. We're still very low to the ground, affording us, you know, very few land slots, which is good, but we have to make all 3 colors, which is very, very important. But we do get a couple of options, including Lumbering Falls, which I like. And here is the Jeskai build right here, which you can actually go to a couple of different ways. Right now, in Standard, without of the Gatewatch, as I'm recording this, there's already a Jeskai Aggro deck that plays actually much higher than this. You know, it plays Thunderbreak Regents, it plays Mantis Riders and stuff. This deck, you could play more Mantis Rider, but I'm also trying to play, again, very, very low. You could also play Monastery Mentor in this deck. I think that would be a good addition if you wanted to cut some of the spells. But the philosophy I've gone with here, if you haven't noticed, is just draw all the cards for 1 mana that we possibly can. You know, we've got 4 Slip Through Space, 4 Expedite, 4 Defiant Strike, and a Treasure Cruise. That is 13 cards that can draw us cards for effectively 1 mana. So we're going incredibly fast and we're churning out cards all in 1 turn as much as possible here. But we can add Seeker of the Way. I definitely see doing that. And Mantis Rider could be a 3 or 4 of too, if you added a land or so, because again, we're only playing 19. But the Jeskai mana base is a lot more reliable than the Temur mana base, which I think we can play 19 lands and still play a couple of 3-drops here. Before I move on, I do want to point out the 2 copies of Jeskai Charm there, the only, you know, other 3 mana card in the deck. But Jeskai Charm is ridiculously important. If we're open to Jeskai colors, this is one of the more important cards we can play. Just any of the options can be a blowout, especially the all your guys get a buff and lifelink. That can just be freaking believable in the deck. And here's the mana base for the Jeskai deck. It just feels more reliable than the Temur mana base, and we get to play a double strike creature. So there it is right there. I like it. And, you know, finally, before we wrap it up, I just want to point out some important sideboard cards for really all 3 of these decks. There's not that many green cards that I'd put in the sideboard, nor are there that many white cards that I'd really put in the sideboard, outside of maybe another Jeskai Charm or Soulfire Grandmaster. Maybe Monastery Mentor could be in the main or the board of the Jeskai deck. So that deck has a diverse sideboard. Or in the Jeskai deck, you just board into traditional, you know, Jeskai, you know, more mid-range Jeskai. You could do that. But as far as the Izzet-based deck period goes, some very important sideboard options. Start with Rending Volley here. Takes out Ajutais and opposing Mantis Riders and Hangerback Walker tokens and a bunch of other stuff. So Rending Volley is important. I think the better card than Tears of Valakut for the next few months. Until Rending Volley rotates in what, like fall, I think. So yeah, I think it's probably the better option. Disdainful Stroke, also a good option, really just because decks are going to go way above our heads just starting on the 3rd or 4th turn. And so something like this can be a very, very powerful option to sort of keep the game going in our favor and deny them a huge drop that just sort of overpowers us. Dispel is also an important sideboard counterspell to play. Dispel just really keeps them mostly from destroying our creatures. You know, that's important. Or playing a huge blowout like Drogo's Command or any of the commands really, Atarka's Command. So Dispel can be a super important card. Atarka Aggro is an important deck in the format for the next few months. Dispel's good. Negate, the last counterspell I'll cover, similar to Dispel, but can also counter Mass Removal, which is super awesome too. Roast, a very important sideboard burn spell to play, in the last sideboard card that I'll cover here, because there are other options, but I think these are the most important. Roast, very important for taking out Siege Rhino and everything in between that does not fly. So, and especially the stupid Rhino. So, which again, we'll only have to worry about for a few more months. Whew, well, I think that's all I got. I apologize for the length of the video. It's probably super long. But that is how to build Izzet. You know, you can start with the base deck and sort of add on from there as you go, or as you get the dollars, you know. This deck doesn't have long to go in the format, but I think it's a very, very good and reliable deck while we're at it. At the budget level, it's still really fun to play and can pick up wins out of nowhere. And once you get up to the Temur or Jeskai level of the deck, you're spending a couple of more bucks, but the deck gets just exponentially better at that level because it opens up to a lot of different options. And I really, really like that Temur one, by the way. Getting Atarka's Command and especially Become Amends just helps the deck out so much. And Stormchaser Mage is amazing. So the deck is good no matter what version you play. Well, what's coming up next? In the comments of the last video, I asked you to tell me what you'd like to see coming up, and I told you some things I'm working on too. And I'd like you to do the same thing in the comment section of this video. Let me know what you want to see. But here was the most popular stuff. Goblins was very popular, and I didn't want to do 2 red decks in a row, or else I would have done Goblins. Allies was, of course, extremely popular, and I almost did a how to build allies. 4 to 6 color Eldrazi was also very popular. I'm already trying to do something with that, just like all these other ones. Mono Black Control, something else I've been brewing up, pretty popular in the comments section. Displacer Infinite Combo, that was, a couple of people brought that up. And then the Ailey deck, people want to see that too. So, of those, which do you guys like most? And of course, tell me what else you'd like to see too, because I'm always interested in that. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. I'd like you to do all the things, because I'm on YouTube, that's what you do. We're on YouTube, you ask people to do that stuff. And you're watching YouTube, that's what you do, you do the stuff, so do it. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, my wizards.
Feel like something in my soul's just raising. I got a bounce in my step and I'm hanging south. New persona, I'm hotter than Arizona, my aura corona, and I'll be sicker than pneumonia.